She went to the convenience store to shop, but unexpectedly turned around and encountered her entangled and fierce ex-boyfriend. To avoid this trouble, Kia tried to quietly walk away. However, her ex-boyfriend not only called her back, but also grabbed her arm and said, "I want to talk to you." But Kia was not willing to waste more time on this person. Kia thought the matter was over, but in the afternoon, by a quiet beach, her frustrated ex-boyfriend unexpectedly blocked her again. Initially, he tried to plead with Kia with a look of self-pity, but Kia knew his true nature was evil. In their relationship, he had not only been ambiguous with several women in town, but also had a fiancée who was about to get married. After his true nature was exposed, the ex-boyfriend immediately tore off his false facade, revealing his fierce nature. He not only slapped Kia hard, but also pressed her to the ground, intending to assault her. In the chaos, Kia found a stone and desperately smashed it into his head. Then, Kia quickly turned and retreated, and after confirming that he was unable to move, she issued a warning in a hoarse voice. A few days later, 2 boys found the ex-boyfriend's body in a swamp, the cause of death being a fall from a high observation tower. The body was face up, and preliminary investigations by the police found a loose, fallen step at the top of the tower. However, due to the tide rising at night, the footprints on the mudflat beneath the tower had been washed away, making it impossible to determine whether the death was accidental or caused by someone pushing him. During the investigation, the police discovered 2 suspicious points. First, the tower was steep, and ordinary people needed to use the railing to climb, but no fingerprints were found on the railing, suggesting it had been deliberately wiped. Second, the deceased's coat had several unidentified red fibers, clearly left by someone else's clothing. Based on these clues, the police were more inclined to consider this a murder. The news of Chase's death soon spread throughout the small town around the swamp, sparking widespread discussion. Residents generally suspected Kia because she was always reclusive, living alone deep in the swamp, her behavior incompatible with local customs, and she was even described by children as a malicious witch. Chase, the deceased, had previously been involved with Kia, and 2 days before the incident, a fisherman witnessed a physical altercation between the two. Moreover, Chase's mother provided a crucial lead to the police. On the night of the incident, Chase left home still wearing a shell necklace, a token of love given by Kia. However, when Chase's body was found, the necklace was missing. Chase's mother suspected that Kia, out of love turned to hatred, murdered Chase. To cover her motive, Kia took back the necklace, which had no real value and would not normally be deliberately taken. Since many clues pointed to Kia, the police searched her residence and found a red wool hat. Testing revealed that the hat's material was exactly the same as the red fibers on the victim's body. Kia was thus formally charged by the police. The townspeople were pleased, except for a retired, kind-hearted lawyer. Tom has always disapproved of everyone's prejudice against Kia. Seeing her trapped in captivity, he felt compassionate and voluntarily offered to serve as Kia's defense lawyer free of charge. Under his patient guidance, the silent Kia finally spoke, recounting her background and her grievances with the deceased Chase. Kia was born into a family of 7. Her father was a retired wounded soldier, and her mother was a homemaker passionate about painting. As the youngest daughter, Kia had 2 older sisters and 2 older brothers. The family lived in a wooden house deep in a swamp. Although not wealthy, they once enjoyed warmth and harmony. However, perhaps due to financial pressure, her father gradually developed a drinking habit and began to abuse his family. Unable to endure the endless beatings and scoldings, her mother eventually left her children and ran away from home. Subsequently, her brothers and sisters also left one after another, leaving Kia alone to face her brutal father. Fortunately, Kia quickly learned to protect herself, seeking quiet places daily to hide and minimizing her presence to avoid provoking her father's displeasure. After her wife and children left, her father also realized the estrangement with Kia and gradually became aware of his own problems. He not only restrained his temper, but also often took Kia out to gather clams, selling the proceeds to the town's grocery store to supplement the family income. When Kia first accompanied her father to the store, she was immediately attracted by the lollipops at the counter, but could only silently swallow her longing due to poverty. Unexpectedly, as she was leaving, she was delighted to find an extra candy in the paper bag. Turns out, the shopkeeper had long noticed her desire and, out of compassion, secretly gifted her one, gently reminding her that she could attend the town's public school, which not only offered free tuition, but also provided lunch. Although Kia had never entered the town alone, she mustered her courage and went there wearing the dress her mother had left her. However, as soon as she stepped into the school, she was mocked by her classmates. Some ridiculed her dress for not fitting properly, some called her dirty and smelly, and others despised her for walking barefoot. Her first contact with the outside world was a heavy blow. Her self-esteem was damaged, and she immediately fled the school. After that, she never received formal education again. For the next year, Kia and her father depended on each other, living through a relatively peaceful time. Until one day, her mother sent a letter. After her father read it, his face changed drastically. He not only burned the letter, but also destroyed all of her mother's remaining clothes. Confused, Kia could only cherish the ashes in a bottle, as if this could preserve her mother's final love, unaware that her father had also decided to leave the swamp forever. Thus, Kia became an orphan. But she did not show much sadness, as if she was already accustomed to departure without saying goodbye. To make a living, the young girl would wake before dawn every day to dig for clams in the marsh and imitate her father's method of exchanging them at the grocery store for food. The shopkeeper couple not only often provided Kia with extra food, but also frequently gave her shoes and clothes. At night, afraid to sleep alone, she would drag her mattress into the living room, wrap herself tightly in a quilt, and fall asleep amid the chirping insects. Over time, Kia grew fond of living alone. Although she had no playmates, she often rowed a small boat to explore the swamp, making friends with the creatures there, whom she regarded as family and friends. In the company of natural beings, Kia quietly grew up, unaware that she had already turned 14. Kia had always thought she would live alone forever. However, one day, she was surprised to find a feather on a tree stump she passed by. For several days in a row, feathers appeared, sometimes accompanied by a box of flower seeds. Although she did not know who had given them to her, Kia felt the kindness behind the gesture, so she plucked a feather from her collection as a gift in return. Unexpectedly, she met that mysterious person, who turned out to be Tate, whom she had met a few times in her childhood. Once, when little Kia was unfamiliar with the surroundings and went out alone in a boat, she got lost. In the end, young Tate escorted her back home. But because Tate needed to go to the town for school, and Kia was unwilling to interact with strangers anymore, they lost contact afterward. This reunion left Kia a bit overwhelmed. Fortunately, Tate had been quietly watching her all along and knew of her strong interest in swamp creatures. He subtly tried to communicate with her by giving her feathers as gifts. Sure enough, Kia quickly lowered her guard. Moreover, when Tate learned that Kia was illiterate, he voluntarily offered to teach her reading and writing. Kia was intelligent and learned quickly, soon able to recite encyclopedias fluently and vividly. What amazed Tate even more was Kia's extraordinary talent in painting. The various animal sketches hanging in her room were proof of this. Perhaps it was their shared love for the swamp that, during their daily interactions, their feelings deepened rapidly. Eventually, on a warm sunny afternoon, they kissed each other and officially became lovers. The next day was Kia's 16th birthday, and Tate specially prepared a birthday cake for her. Seeing this gesture, Kia was deeply moved. This was the first birthday gift she had ever received in her life. After sharing the sweetness of the cake, their feelings grew stronger, and they embraced. However, just as Kia was ready to entrust herself completely to him, Tate suddenly stopped. He was not overwhelmed by desire. He knew well that they were still young. If they succumbed to temptation too early, it might cause Kia physical and mental trauma. Feeling loved once again, Kia was like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, revealing an unprecedented radiant smile. But as the seasons changed, winter giving way to spring, all things continued to flow in their cycle. Tate also received an acceptance letter from a university and was about to set off to another city for his studies. Before leaving, Tate was worried about Kia and carefully planned her future. Kia's depiction and understanding of natural creatures are enough to publish several works. Although it may not make her rich, at least she won't have to rely on collecting clams to get by in the future. Then, Tate handed Kia a list of publishers. But when Kia heard this, she did not feel happy. Instead, she felt a sense of gloom. She thought Tate was saying goodbye to her for the last time. Tate sensed her unease and quickly continued. On Independence Day, a month from now, he will definitely come back and watch fireworks with Kia under the night sky. Thus, this young couple in love was forced to part temporarily. Although Kia had long been accustomed to living alone for many years, the following month felt like a lifetime to her. Only through painting could Kia slightly soothe the unrest and waves rising in her heart. The eagerly awaited Independence Day finally arrived. To welcome her beloved, Kia wore her favorite dress, applied lipstick, and arrived at the beach at dawn to wait. At first, her eyes sparkled with excitement and anticipation. However, from sunrise to sunset, and into the night, until the dazzling fireworks burst in the darkness, the person who promised to watch the fireworks with her never appeared. Kia did not understand why her life was always marked by continuous loss. Back home, she, like a wrong child, tore up page after page of her painstakingly drawn sketches and threw them into the fireplace flames. Just as Kia was lost in emotional confusion and unable to extricate herself, a Cooper hawk suddenly flying past her window gave her a moment of escape. Following the hawk's trail, she went to the beach to feed her visiting friend. As the tide repeatedly washed over the sand, erasing her footprints, the scars in her heart seemed to be gently smoothed. 5 years later, as the area around the swamp was developed into a resort, some profit-driven developers noticed Kia's house and planned to demolish it to build a hotel. Unwilling to lose her home, Kia, through the grocery store owner's introduction, consulted a local lawyer. After reviewing the property documents left by her father, the lawyer confirmed that the wooden house where Kia lived and the surrounding land belonged to her private property. This meant that, without Kia's consent, the developers had no right to demolish her house. However, Kia needed to pay overdue property taxes. Otherwise, the local government had the right to auction the property. Confronted with a tax bill of up to $800, Kia finally let go of her worries, found the publisher list, and organized her recently redrawn paintings into a book to send out. Soon, she received a positive reply from the publisher, along with a substantial royalty. She then used this income to pay the taxes and officially became the rightful owner of that small wooden house. Having finally protected her home, Kia could breathe a sigh of relief. One day, she leisurely went to the beach to sketch, and it was here that she met Chase. Chase was a well-known playboy in town. Almost all eligible girls with some looks had been pursued by him. However, the reclusive Kia was unaware of this. As she grew older, she naturally harbored some instinctive fondness for males her age. Therefore, when Chase took the initiative to start a conversation and invited her for a private picnic, she agreed without hesitation. However, just as they reached the riverbank, Chase could not wait to press Kia down to the ground. Fortunately, Kia struggled to break free, preventing Chase from succeeding, and Kia was able to escape danger. Unexpectedly, the next day, Chase found Kia again like a shadow, disguising his vile intentions as deep affection and covering it with false words. Because Kia was inexperienced and unaware of the treacherous nature of human hearts, coupled with years of loneliness that made her crave care and companionship, she naively believed Chase's words and agreed to be with him. After that, Chase, who was skilled at manipulating a girl's psychology, no longer rushed to achieve his goals, but instead patiently accompanied Kia on dates. One day, the two climbed an abandoned fire tower where the top offered a full view of the beautiful swamp landscape. Although Kia had lived there for over 20 years, it was her first time overlooking the entire land, and she couldn't help feeling delighted, which also increased her fondness for Chase. Sensing this change keenly, Chase believed the time was ripe. A few days later, under the pretext of going out for supplies, Chase lured Kia to the inn, then deceitfully and coaxingly engaged in a relationship with her. Kia was completely unaware, and afterwards, she even gave Chase a shell necklace she made herself as a token of their love. Unexpectedly, Chase turned around and boasted about it, proudly bragging to his friends about their private affair. Coincidentally, this was overheard by Tate, who was passing by. He was instantly furious and fought with Chase on the spot, but was eventually separated by passers-by. That night, Tate found Kia and not only exposed Chase's hypocritical nature, but also confessed that he had failed to meet her years ago because he was once attracted by external glamour and forgot their appointment. He felt ashamed to face her afterward and never explained himself. But now he had awakened and realized that no matter how wonderful the outside world was, without Kia by his side, he could never find true happiness. This time, Tate returned hoping to seek Kia's forgiveness and reconcile with her. However, Kia still couldn't forgive his abandonment and refused to believe that Chase, who had once vowed to be with her for life, was a complete heartbreaker. She immediately rejected Tate's request to reunite. But reality soon dealt her a cruel blow. One day, Kia went to town to buy daily necessities and unexpectedly saw Chase dating another woman. Once again betrayed, she felt as if the sky was falling, but she did not expose Chase's lie on the spot. Instead, she ran home alone. Unexpectedly, Chase quickly caught up. Kia, unwilling to have any further ties with him, hid in the bushes outside the house. Through the window glass, she saw Chase cursing loudly in an empty room, then angrily smashing all the furniture until he vented his emotions, and finally slamming the door and leaving. At that moment, Kia seemed to see her father's shadow. She couldn't understand why many men in the world habitually used anger to cover their incompetence and vulgarity. In the following days, Chase came daily to harass Kia. Alone, Kia could only hide in the depths of the swamp on a small boat. However, avoidance was ultimately just a temporary measure. Powerless to resist, she seemed to believe that only leaving the swamp could completely free her from entanglement and restore her freedom. But the question was, where could she go after leaving? Just as Kia was falling into despair, her brother, whom she had been separated from for nearly 20 years, suddenly returned. Although they had not seen each other for many years, being blood relatives, they quickly became familiar again. Now her brother was a soldier. Seeing Kia's living situation, he realized she still lived there. He told Kia that their mother's departure years ago was not intentional abandonment. She had wanted to find a safe place first and then take the children away. Unexpectedly, their father refused, and their mother initially planned to seek custody through legal means. But before she could succeed, she was diagnosed with cancer and soon passed away with regrets. Her brother's visit and the revelation that their mother had never truly abandoned her warmed Kia's nearly frozen heart. Additionally, before leaving, her brother mentioned a past event that Kia had long forgotten. When she was 6 years old, she had stolen her father's small boat and not only was slapped dozens of times by her drunken father, but also nearly thrown into the river to drown. If it weren't for 8-year-old Tate bravely intervening, Kia might have met with an accident. In other words, Tate had saved her life as a child. Her brother brought up this old story because he had heard about her past with Tate. He believed Tate was kind-hearted and someone trustworthy for a lifetime. This caused Kia to waver internally. However, just as she hesitated about whether to accept Tate again, Jace, who had been entangling her, appeared once more. Not only did he physically assault Kia, but he also attempted to further violate her. Fortunately, Kia reacted quickly and did not let Jace succeed. Shocked by this, she dared not sleep inside at night and had to hide in the dark jungle, guarding herself all night. Suddenly, someone arrived in a boat. Kia looked closely and saw it was Tate. It turned out that since their last separation, Tate had been worried about Kia's safety. Seeing her with bruises on her face, he was even more distressed. However, Kia only quietly said she was supposed to meet with the publisher next week, but now, Kia really doesn't have the courage to face them. After hearing this, Tate kept comforting and encouraging her, saying Kia shouldn't ruin her life because of a man. No matter what, she must prioritize her career. Besides, there's a direct bus to the town, so traveling is very convenient. Afterward, Tate threw his red wool hat to the thinly dressed Kia. Kia finally accepted his suggestion. A few days later, in the afternoon, Kia carefully applied makeup to cover her scars and boarded a bus heading to the neighboring town amid the whispers of the townspeople. It was only after lunch on the third day that Kia returned home. Unexpectedly, she was soon listed as a suspect and arrested. The above is Kia's statement about her own experience. After hearing the statement, Tom firmly believed that if Kia could recount her tumultuous fate again during the trial, it would evoke deep sympathy from the jury. However, Kia believed that revealing her scars would only cause her pain and would not earn others' kindness. People would dismiss her as an unloved orphan girl, or even accuse her of being a manipulative woman. After all, in that era when women were treated harshly, men were never wrong, women were always at fault. Although Tom did not agree with Kia's view, he still respected her decision. Subsequently, to gather more strong and reliable clues, Tom conducted extensive investigations and ultimately obtained several key pieces of evidence. On the day of the trial, Tom rebutted all the evidence and doubts raised by the police one by one. First, the fire tower where the incident occurred was tall and steep. Ordinary people would need to use the railing for support to climb to the top. But the police failed to find any fingerprints on the railing and inferred that it had been wiped clean after the incident. However, according to what Tom learned from Kia, Jace and Kia had met at the top of the tower multiple times. Jace was very familiar with the structure of the fire tower and could have climbed to the top without using the railing. Moreover, there had been a heavy rain 2 days before the incident, which could have washed away any fingerprints left on the railing. Second, the police speculated that the red fibers on Chase's coat were left during the attack and confirmed that these fibers matched the material of a red wool hat found at Kia's home. After verification, Tom found that the red wool hat was a gift from Tate to Kia, and Tate had worn this hat during a physical altercation with the deceased Chase. The red fibers on Chase's clothing could also have come from contact during this dispute. Furthermore, regarding the shell necklace mentioned by Chase's mother, it could have been taken by the killer or washed away by the tide at night. More critically, the police did not find any physical evidence related to the case at Kia's residence. However, the strongest proof of Kia's innocence was her solid alibi. It was verified that Kia left her small town around 2:30 p.m. on October 28th by taking a long-distance bus to a neighboring town to meet with a publisher's editor, and did not return until about 1:15 p.m. on October 30th. During this period, multiple witnesses could testify to Kia's whereabouts. Additionally, Kia dined with the publisher's editor at exactly 8 p.m. on October 29th and around 7:30 a.m. on October 30th. In other words, during the critical time when Chase fell to his death from midnight to 2 a.m. on October 30th, Kia was out of town and had no opportunity to commit the crime. After hearing Tom's defense, The prosecution immediately pointed out a flaw. It was possible that Kia, after dining with the editor on the evening of October 29th, took advantage of the night to return to the small town by bus to commit the crime, and then had breakfast again with the editor the next morning to create an illusion of absence. In response, Tom had long been well prepared. Tom investigated the operating hours of the night bus. On October 29th, there was only one night bus from the small town where the publisher was located to Kia's residence. Departing at 11:50 p.m. and arriving at 1:40 a.m. the next day, the return bus also had only one, departing at 2:30 a.m. on October 30th. Chase's time of death was determined to be between midnight and 2 o'clock on the 30th. If Kia were the real culprit, she would have had to reach the fire tower within 20 minutes after the bus arrived to commit the crime and complete the scene cleanup and return to the station within half an hour afterward, meaning the total time from getting off the bus to getting back on must not exceed 50 minutes. However, Tom had commissioned a specialist to conduct practical tests, and traveling by boat from the bus station to the scene of the fire was at least 50 minutes. If Kia committed the crime, she simply would not have had extra time to kill and clean up. Furthermore, the publisher's editor also recalled that during breakfast the next day, Kia appeared calm and showed no signs of abnormality, completely unlike the person who had committed murder a few hours earlier. Moreover, the bus driver on duty that night had no impression of Kia. After rendering the prosecution speechless, Tom concluded, "People always look at Kia with contempt and prejudice, seeing her as an outsider. But she is merely a girl abandoned and struggling alone in the swamp. When she was hungry and cold, people never reached out to help her. Instead, they easily labeled her as a freak, then rejected and mocked her. People act so recklessly simply because she is different from everyone else. But do people truly understand whether it is because this poor girl is different and is thus rejected, or because their rejection causes her to drift further away and become different from everyone else?" Tom pleads with the jury to dismiss the rumors and give Kia a fair judgment, rather than hastily convicting her. Perhaps because of Tom's powerful and deafening speech, or because the evidence was still insufficient, Kia was ultimately acquitted and released on the spot. After being released, Kia reconciled with Tate, and the two lived deep in the swamp, neither married nor having children, dedicating all their time to their careers and each other. After publishing her 7th biological atlas, Kia, knowing her life was coming to an end, rode alone on the water, drifting across the vast surface. Nature had given her everything, and now she chose to return to nature. In a daze, Kia seemed to see her mother's figure appearing on that small path she had looked at day and night, still dressed in the plain clothes she wore when she left, walking lightly, with gentle eyes and a deep smile. Kia had prayed countless times for her mother to return and take her back, and now her wish had finally come true. After Kia's death, Tate followed her last wishes, organized her belongings, and prepared to donate all the materials to the university laboratory. In the midst of organizing, a picture album caught Tate's attention. Initially, the album was filled with fragments of the couple's love over the years, little moments they'd shared together. But as Tate flipped through it page by page, he came across a scene, a male cockroach confronting a female cockroach, followed by a portrait of Chase and a shell necklace hidden within a hollowed-out page. At this moment, Tate finally understood that the murderer of Chase was indeed Kia. The reason she could commit the murder and erase all traces within 50 minutes was that the river water flowed faster at night, greatly shortening the time she needed to sail from the bus station to the fire tower. Kia had lived in the depths of the swamp for over 20 years, familiar with every plant and tree, so her timing for the crime was precise. She even calculated that the rising tide after the murder would wash away traces under the fire tower. As for the bus driver not remembering her at night, it was because Kia had disguised her appearance that evening. Although discovering that Kia was the true culprit, Tate did not believe she should be held responsible for it. As Kia wrote in the album, "In this swamp, death is not necessarily a tragedy, nor does it necessarily represent evil. Every creature must do what it must to survive. Sometimes, if the prey wants to live, the predator must die first." In Tate's view, Kia back then was like a prey trapped in the swamp, desperately trying to survive, while Chase was the brutal predator. If Kia wanted to live, Chase had to die. In the end, Tate burned the rope that tied the album and the shell necklace and buried the shells that could not be burned deep in the sand, along with Kia's undisclosed secret, buried together.